Welcome one, welcome all. It is Friday again, and this is eXhuming the X-Files here on the Outpost Unknown YouTube channel. We have made it, Jeremy. We've gotten to the end, the conclusion of Season 1 of the X-Files. How are you feeling?
Feeling great. I mean, I've really enjoyed what we've done so far.
Well, this is a show known for its season finales, ending kind of like on banger episodes to get everybody super hyped and stoked about Season 2. Does Season 1 start that trend? We're going to find out tonight. My name is Matthew, again, here with Jeremy, and we're going to clone some alien viruses in the Season 1 finale here with the Erlenmeyer Flask. Original air date May 13th, 1994. I do remember watching the finale here. And as I revisited this episode, I remember sort of took me back to when I was, God, how old I would have been. I would have been 13 years old when this finale aired, and I remember sitting there watching it. Gosh, probably it was like 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. or whatever it was on Fox. And when this thing ended, I was like, "Oh my god, when is more X
On the
Files going to
floor.
happen?" I couldn't believe it. So the last couple episodes have been a little weak. Born Again, Roland, we didn't have much to say. I feel like we're going to have some stuff to say about this one. So let's get into it.
All right. So it starts with a high-speed police chase that ends at the dock where our nightcap guy got abducted earlier in the season. I don't know if you noticed that, but
Oh,
some
I
of the
did not.
buildings were the same.
Oh, I did
What
not
was his
notice that.
name? Matt. I can't.
Max.
Max. That's it.
Yeah, Max Fennick, was that his name?
I don't know, but I trust you. So, they they end up like shooting at this dorky little guy in this tiny little car. He ends up jumping into the water. They saw that he hit him. He goes into the water. He doesn't come back up, and so they end up sending in a bunch of crews to like divers and shit to try to find his body. Can't find nothing. But there's this little weird ass pile of green blood on the
It's a
dock where he
Vulcan.
got shot
He shot a
and
Vulcan.
jumped into the water.
Now, this opening sequence was awesome, and I don't know if it was just because I watched Born Again and Roland, and then I rolled straight into this, and I was just looking for some excitement and something like cool. But I was like, my thought and the note that I had when I watched this opening was like, they saved a bunch of money in the budget for this opening sequence. I mean, this car chase, a fight, a shootout. This was like, hey, we're going to spend some money on this episode. We're going to put it right up front to get everybody into it.
So what happens? They're looking for the guy in the water, and eventually he does come out of the water,
Yeah.
ways away from where they're looking for him. And so it's like, how did this guy? What's going on with this weird skinny nerd
Yeah, gets
who
shot
seems
multiple times, doesn't stop running. The cops are like, "What the fuck?" Like, I know I shot this guy. I shot him. I hit him.
so Mulder and Scully come in, and they get informed by Deep Throat, who shows up uh, saying, Fox, you need to keep your eye on this one. But it's
Well,
so fucking vague, like it
well,
always is.
it's so weird because, well, before we get to Deep Throat sort of popping in, the opening credits here changes the tagline for the first time in the show. So the truth is out there would always be at the end of the opening credits. And you hear the boom, the truth is out there. And that became a huge pop culture catchphrase, right? The truth is out there. That was me. But this one, the tagline is trust no one. That was the tagline. I remember when I was a kid seeing that, and I was like, I was just kind of wowed because I guess in my 13-year-old brain, I was like, oh, why would they change the tagline to this? Like, what does this mean? Trust no one. Where's the truth is out there? But yeah, to your point, Deep Throat. Okay, this is what's absurd about this opening sort of sequence here. Mulder is asleep. It's got to be like, I mean, it's clearly nighttime. He is sleeping on the couch, and Deep Throat just gives him a call and is like, "Hey, man, you watching the 8 o'clock news?" Mulder's like, "Oh, let me turn to the channel 8 news, whatever." And then it's like click, and that's it. And Mulder sees that this, there's something happened here, like some guy is lost in the river or the ocean or wherever he's at off the pier. But yeah, Deep Throat gives him absolutely nothing to go on. Zero. Just hey, hey groggy guy, I just woke up. Are you watching the Channel 8 news right now? Click. Like
Yeah.
what the fuck?
Just
Imagine if Mulder would have been like, I'm not going to answer this, or I'm just going to go to sleep. There would be no episode.
it, but in the previous episodes, like he strings them along a little bit better. Like with
Yeah,
Fallen Angel, he strings them along. This one, I keep throughout the notes, I keep writing that Deep Throat is so full of shit because he doesn't say anything in this
yeah,
episode other than it's clear like he's trying to keep Mulder's focus on chasing, Harvey the Rabbit. Like it.
yeah. And to the credit, like Chris Carter wrote this episode. This was directed by R.W.
Oh,
Goodwin.
okay,
I was going to actually say to Chris Carter's credit, he does have Mulder and Scully call Deep Throat out on his shit about that. Like even Mulder gets in his face. He's like, "You've given me fucking nothing." Because Deep Throat at one point in this episode is like, "Well, I thought you'd be trying a little harder than this," and Mulder's like, "What the fuck am I supposed to be looking at? You just told me to
yeah.
watch the news. Like, you got to give me something a little more than that." So what my biggest
Oh,
problem with Deep Throat on this particular episode was the last time we saw Deep Throat. So the last time we saw him was EBE, which was like 6 or 7 episodes back. And if you remember what happened in EBE, he literally sends Mulder on a wild goose chase. The entire episode, Mulder realizes that Deep Throat has lied to him and Scully about a ton of shit. He's like, "Don't look over there, Mulder. There's an alien in there." And then Mulder looks and there's no alien. And so they kind of like leave on this. Mulder doesn't believe what his bullshit any longer. But in this episode, Mulder kind of like reverts
right back
back
to it.
to, and even Scully's like, "What the fuck? Why are you believing anything this guy tells you?" And Mulder's like, "He wouldn't steer me wrong." It's like, fucker, he just steered you wrong for an entire episode 6 episodes ago. Like I don't understand why Mulder is suddenly on board with being so obsessed of trying to figure out what Deep Throat is telling him.
Yeah, but going back to when we were kids watching this, like I remember buying everything in this episode.
Oh yeah.
The obsession, the going after it. Like why, why is this so hard to digest as an adult that as a 13-year-old kid's like, yeah, fuck yeah. Let's go see what's going on with this weirdo at the pier. Like
I think like when we're kids, we don't necessarily understand um what's the word I'm trying to think of here. It's like as an adult, we understand. Okay, there's logic at play here. You've shown me, you've established something with this character. All right, he believed Deep Throat, and then Deep Throat completely lied to him, and he stopped believing Deep Throat. So that all makes sense. It tracks. But then suddenly switching back to I trust Deep Throat implicitly, even though without any real good reason to. As a kid, we're not really worried about that. We're sort of thinking about, oh yeah, this we're just getting back to the Mulder that we really really enjoyed and Deep Throat stuff from early season. This is cool. Aliens. We're not thinking about that. But as an adult, we're like, I need a reason here. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't make any sense logically why Mulder would just revert to this sort of person.
with nothing. And I think, well, that you mentioned Chris Carter wrote this, so
Yeah.
so much more makes sense now.
Yep.
But with just a little bit more effort, I could have bought into it. Just give me a little substance
Yes.
into what is going on. Why do we need to focus him here? And so they get pointed. No, I don't even think they get pointed. They go after the scientist's like scientific partner. research partner or some shit like that.
Yeah, they look and they find some sort of car on the video footage with a license plate
Oh
number,
yeah,
and that kind of gets them to, I think, the scientist. And that's that funny moment where Scully like is trying to pet the monkey.
yeah. It gets jumped by a chimp. Like,
And I'm like, is she going to start the next outbreak here? And that scientist freaks the fuck out. He's like, don't you touch that. Don't
what?
touch
I'm.
anything.
Isn't she a PhD in biology?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. She's smarter than messing with chimps in a research facility. Like, she knows what those monkeys are there for.
Not when Chris Carter's writing the
Yeah,
episode,
yeah,
though.
yeah. Idiot. So they talk to this guy. He says, I have nothing to fucking do with this. I have nothing to say to you. You guys need to get out and leave me alone." And so they do. Whereas the previous episode, that would cause Mulder's hackles to raise and he would steal shit from you in order to get evidence. They don't do anything. They just walk out. And then he
Yep.
gets a visit from some government guy and ends up getting gunned down. I can't remember. He dies.
Yeah, there's a weird kind of like a Men in Black sort of thing. It's the same guy that later on in the episode is like listening in. He's in the van. He's listening in on Mulder's conversations on the telephone and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And he takes down this scientist guy, and I get they're trying to clean up essentially what again, spoilers alert, of course, that's just should go that's just a fact with this show. Everyone knows we kind of walk through the show, but essentially it's like this dude at the very beginning is an alien. He's like a cloned alien kind of hybrid that's gotten loose, and this guy here is trying to like tie up loose ends and kill everyone so that no one realizes that this thing has gotten out and is running around the world.
And so yeah, he makes it look like a suicide. Lets all the chimps out, and so they go back. They're investigating the ransacked lab, and he finds the title of this episode, an Erlenmeyer flask with a label on it. I can't remember what the label said on it, but how they zeroed in on this one thing in a lab full of beakers and vials and fluids, I don't know.
Like how Mulder's like, "What's this, Scully?" And she just kind of looks at him because again, this is another episode where Scully is just tired of this shit. She's like, "What are we doing?" Like she does not give a shit about Deep Throat. She does not believe any of the bullshit that Deep Throat is telling Mulder. She thinks Mulder is going off on a wild goose chase here, and has that line. She's like, "If this is monkey pee, you're on your own." Like
Yeah.
she's ready to
If
just
this is
like,
monkey pee.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm done. And Mulder actually tells you can tell Chris Carter is a big Star Wars fan because earlier on, when Mulder Deep Throat shows up at Mulder's house, just out of the blue, like outside his apartment or something, which is also weird because Deep Throat has always been very careful about where Mulder meets him and how they communicate. I think the first time they met each other was in the bathroom of a bar, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and I'm like, I'm sitting here as like adult Matthew thinking, Deep Throat wouldn't just walk up in front of Mulder's apartment. I mean, that would be. I mean, Deep Throat would know there'd probably be people trying to watch him at all times. Why would he walk up to Mulder's apartment? That just seems stupid. And we'll find out later on down the road in this episode why that probably was a stupid idea. But again, it's kind of like the writing. I wish that the writing of the characters was a little better, and not so. I'm tired of as an adult. I'm tired of watching characters make really stupid decisions and things. It's there's going to be a whole episode on Nobody's Listening with Rachel and I as we discuss this new Star Wars show, The Acolyte, and just segueing is I can't enjoy it. I love Star Wars to death. I love everything about Star Wars. I'm a huge fan. I cannot enjoy that show because every character does the dumbest shit possible to move the plot forward. As a kid, I could overlook that kind of stuff. It didn't matter to me. I was more about the aliens and the mythology and the cool imagery and all that. But as an adult, I'm like, I need things. I need people to do things that would logically do. And if you don't write things, if you don't do it in such a way that they're not doing things logically, then I feel it's really lazy writing. And I started thinking of like, oh, well, I could have changed this. This could have been better if this happened and this happened and this happened. Uh, I don't know. Do you think Deep Throat? Did you ever expect Deep Throat to walk up to Mulder's front door?
Well, no, but now that you mentioned it, I think I have a theory on why.
Okay.
But I can't really talk about it now unless we spoil the end of the episode.
Okay.
So maybe we
We'll
could
table
circle
it.
back around to
Yeah,
this.
we'll table it.
So Scully takes the monkey pee over to a Georgetown University where somebody helps her analyze what's on it. In the meantime, Mulder is looking around the lab, ends up finding these keys to a storage facility, like one of those rent to long-term storage facility things, but
Yep.
in a city, so it's kind of contained in a building. He goes inside, ends up finding or getting chased by a couple of guys that were in a van very, very briefly. Goes inside, goes into the locked room, and ends up like in a room full of tanks with people floating in them.
Yeah.
And
Awesome. It looks so
it was,
cool.
yeah, it was rad as fuck. But no idea what's going on in there. We still have no idea what any of this shit is about. But he's got like 9 people inside of this storage unit. Um,
And
then
they're
he
breathing,
leaves.
and that's the thing that's what's cool about it. They're and Mulder mentions later on is like Scully, they were breathing underwater because you see these dudes, and I think like the water's green or something like that. It's some weird unearthly sort of liquid, and these dudes don't have like tubes running in their mouth to breathe. They're just like in there moving around and shit like that with nothing connected to their mouth or anything like that. I remember as a kid when I saw that, I was awestruck. I was like, "Oh my god, this is so amazing! This is so cool!" And even as an adult, I'm like,
Yeah, that
"Damn,
scene
that
looked
looks."
great.
It still looks cool today. I was like, "Man, that looks cool!" And David Duchovny plays it so great. He's got like that awe on his face as the audience would if we walked into something like that and we saw like, "What the hell are we seeing here?"
And so we end up finding that the scientist has crawled out of the river. He's tried to contact the scientist buddy of his with the chimps who is now dead. Mulder ends up picking up the phone and pretending that he's that doctor and says, "Okay, meet me down here." I can't remember what happens to the doctor where he end up in an ambulance for some reason. Like, does he get hit by a bus or some shit?
God, now I'm struggling to remember exactly what happens.
But
He does end
but
up
they
in the
poke
ambulance. Yeah.
him. Yeah, they poke
Yep.
him, and that's when you realize that he's full of some sort of toxic gas that almost
Yeah.
instantly kills everybody inside of the van. And then he flees that scene. So there's something unnatural, something about this guy that could get shot. He could live underneath water. He has toxic gases inside of him.
Green blood.
And then do we? I think after the scene where Mulder finds all those bodies, doesn't is it at this point that what's his face Deep Throat comes back in and says that it's alien DNA that these
Well,
guys are being.
yeah. So basically, what happens is Mulder tells Scully, "Hey, go off and test the monkey pee and all of that." And Scully is hanging out with that other scientist, who basically tells her, "This is like alien bacteria." And so Scully actually, because there's something with I don't know if it's the chromosomes or the DNA. There's like gaps in the sequences and stuff like that. And Scully is told for the very first time, or at least not told, but given actual evidence of alien life at that point in time. And Gillian Anderson plays it really well. Like she's completely shocked. And I think it's this episode where Scully even like apologizes to Mulder at a
Yeah, yeah,
certain point, which would have been awesome, except how Chris Carter wrote David Duchovny's thing. David Duchovny or Mulder should have been like, fuck yeah. As soon as Scully tells him, Mulder, this is alien life. Mulder should have been like, "Oh my fucking god!" Like that should have been the happiest day of his life, aside from finding his sister, because everything he believed in would have been proven at that point in time. But Chris Carter writes it in such a way where Muller's like, "Yeah, Scully, I got to show you something else." He completely blows it off that this alien bacteria has been discovered, and they literally have the evidence of alien life in their hands. And it's like, no, 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 Scully, that's cool. But come check out all these dudes in tanks I found yesterday. And of course, they get in there, and there's no tanks. Everything has
Completely
been
cleaned up.
removed, and that's when Deep Throat walks in.
And he has this actually very interesting speech. I don't remember a lot of it, but I did write down my favorite line from it, that the U.S. government had half a dozen better salvage or UFO salvages that happened after Roswell.
Yep,
At that
I wrote
time in
that
my
down
life,
too.
when I was a kid, I was fucking obsessed with Roswell. I thought that was just the coolest thing.
Yes.
So what a great line! That
Yep. Yep, and he's basically taking he this I think this is the first mention in the show of alien cloning. It's essentially like Deep Throat is laying out everything. He's like, "Look, we're cloning. We're doing the alien human hybrid thing. We've got alien experiments with alien viruses," and I loved it because that speech that he's giving, he's like, "Hey man, we got that first tissue in 1947." And then Mulder mentions Roswell, and he's like, "Roswell's just a smokescreen, dude. I mean, we got a million other better crashes and things from that after that." And yeah, as a kid, and even as an adult, I'm like, "This is what I want. Like, this is what going all the way back to the pilot episode of X Files with the aliens and all of that stuff. This is what hooked me, and this is why I come to watch the X Files. I love the sort of, especially early on, the mythology that they're building with all of this alien stuff and the government conspiracies and the cloning and the. To me, as a kid, I was like, "Fuck yeah, this is exactly where it's at."
it's when the show is at its best, giving me government conspiracies, giving me aliens, giving me that there's this whole thing going on behind the scenes, that there's control being exerted over basically everything, and that we only know what they want us to know. I've always loved stories like that,
Yeah,
and this one just grabs a hold of that imagination string for me and just yanks on it sometimes.
yeah, super cool.
So let me see. They go through that speech. A lot of talking about a lot of how do you keep that secret, and it's just a matter of just killing everybody that ever gets involved.
Yeah,
And then
which is what these Men in Black. I'm just gonna call. They don't name them as Men in Black in the episode, but they're just dudes wearing black, running around killing people and cleaning up everything that Mulder has seen.
doesn't Mulder get kidnapped like right
Yes.
after this?
Yeah, they kidnap Mulder. Um, and I can't remember. Does Mulder find the scientist guy? Mulder finds the scientist guy at a certain
Yeah.
point, and then the Men in Black show up, and I don't know if they shoot him or something, but then the gas comes out and it like burns Mulder's eyes,
Mhm.
and then they basically capture him at that point. And once that they've captured Mulder, Deep Throats goes to Scully and is like, they're gonna kill him. You gotta help him out here." And the way that they help him out is Deep Throat gets Scully into this facility that has the original tissue from 1947. And what is the original tissue?
Well, when they find it, she pulls it out of liquid nitrogen, and it's an alien fetus.
Yeah. And it looks cool. It still to this day looks cool. And I remember seeing that as a kid, and that's the first time we've actually seen an alien on the X Files. They always talk about the aliens, but that's like the first time we got to see it. It's like this little baby alien, whatever. And even as a kid, I was just like, wow, like I was floored. 13-year-old me thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen.
And then what happened? It was that little green underneath the skin, but kind of white and pink. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really, really good looking piece.
Still looks
And
good to this day. They did a good job on that prop.
I put a note in there that Scully would, and she's just using this to get Mulder back. She's not like running away with it. She's not turning it over for scientific. Like Scully is willing to throw away and cough up the only piece of physical evidence she's ever seen, just to protect Mulder. She's
Yeah.
willing to throw the truth away just to make sure that he continues to live, which is a cool character thing from her.
Yeah. She always
Um,
does that. That's I can't remember what the episode was when they were kind of like in the Area 51 type place. Remember they were wiping Mulder's brain, and she basically took that dude hostage and was like, "I'll fucking kill you unless you release Mulder." And then they made that swap. She always does that, and she loves Mulder. You can tell from just this, and even Deep Throat. Let me ask you this: how are we supposed to feel about Deep Throat in this episode? Before we get to what ultimately happens to Deep Throat, the last time we saw him, he kind of came across as a villain a bit, where it was like, actually, he admits, I have lied to you and I have thrown you off the case of certain things, and I give you what I tell you. He said that great line as like, a lie is best believed when it's in between two truths, whatnot. So like all this stuff that Deep Throat is telling Mulder and Scully, because Scully was never privy to any of this. Deep Throat just decides at this point, hey, I'm just going to tell everything to Scully. Scully, here you go, Scully. Yeah, there's aliens, Roswell, all this stuff, and alien viruses and hybrids and crazy shit like that. How are we supposed to feel? Are we supposed to believe what he's telling Mulder and Scully in this episode, or is it again a lot of it's just lies and he's trying to do something else?
maybe, but there's a motivation change for him, and this again, I think we'll circle back into, or when we circle around to why he showed up outside of Mulder's apartment and why he's doing what he's doing right now.
Okay.
Because he's working with Scully, he got because he couldn't go do it himself, and you got to keep in mind that up until this point, this guy has been a puppet of the cigarette smoking man to a point
Yep.
that his job is basically been spelled out as I need Mulder to look this way so that we can do this other shit over here. And there almost seems to be a desperation with his character because he couldn't go into this facility to retrieve the alien baby. He had to use his contacts to set up Scully with the appropriate credentials to go into this facility because he, for some reason, couldn't just do it himself.
It's true.
So they meet up. He gets very, very angry when she wants to do the exchange. Like he gets irrationally
Yeah.
angry about it. Like, just give me the fucking fetus, Scully. I'm gonna do the thing myself.
Yeah, because she's like, I'll do it, and he's like, no, no, no. They think I'm gonna be the one that's gonna be there, that's gonna make the transaction. That was the deal. I would do it, and he really, like, you're right. He really has to convince her because she does not want to give him that box.
Right. And what's funky is like they don't leave to go to some other place to do the drop. Like he just stays parked on the bridge in his car, and then the van pulls up. Scully is like a half block away in her own car, watching all of this happen. So they didn't need to go anywhere. They were probably watching the entire interaction where Deep Throat is in the car, like give me the fucking thing. So he gets out, he goes over to the van, hands over the piece, and then a gun comes back out of the window and just kills him. Which I remember being a kid, like holy shit, what the
Yeah, I was
kills Deep Throat.
shocked as a kid. Shocked.
Back of the van opens up. A very beaten Mulder comes tumbling out of the back,
His
and then this
eyes.
van goes speeding off.
Mulder's eyes look like prolapsed buttholes. They're just
They
the
did.
reddest, puffiest, swollen
Yeah.
things. You can't even see his eyes at that point. It's just, but he's still got his funny banter about him when they have that scene where he's in the back of the van and the guy's mocking him, whatever, and Mulder's still trying to crack a joke. He's like, "Oh yeah, well, I'm feeling all right. How you feeling?" It's Like good
And
old Mulder.
Scully walks over to what's it, or a dying deep throat, and all he has to say as he pulls her close is trust no one, and then he
Yep.
passes away.
Yep. She does go to Mulder first, though. That's important.
Yes.
She runs to him first, make sure he's okay, and then goes to Deep Throat. And that I remember, like, trust no one, because that's another simple thing that has entered into the lexicon of society and whatnot. Trust no one. And I remember seeing that as a kid, and I'm thinking to myself, where will this show go? Like, all you can trust is Mulder and Scully. Everything after this, they're setting the stage of the viewer cannot trust anything. Anybody that tries to help them, anybody, like, can we trust the lone gunman, for example? Can we trust any of these people that claim to want to be helping them when Deep Throat was like, don't trust anybody. But I was shocked when he got shot and killed. I was shocked.
Yeah. It was a huge moment because and stuff like that just didn't happen in television
Yep.
back then. Like important behind the scenes string pullers just didn't get executed as a matter of course in a television show. So I remember just being completely blown away.
Yeah. And
So
Jerry Harden was so good in that role too. Like, you loved seeing Deep Throat when he popped up on screen. It was like, okay, cool. It's going to be a cool episode if Deep Throat shows up and he's involved. He felt so important to what this show was. And yeah, to see him just gunned down like that, you're just, where the fuck do we go from here?
well, 13 days later, after Mulder's chronic pink eye cures itself, he just out of the blue calls up Scully and says, "It's over. The X Files are closed. No lead up, no teasing, no real reason, no arguing with Skinner or whatever cronies are sitting in a conference room about violating protocol and shit like that. Just sorry, X Files canceled."
Yep.
Then
Yep.
we
He he,
then
he
we
mentions, because she says who did it, and that's supposed to look exactly like the pilot episode too. Like, you get the same shot set up. Scully wakes up at the same time, like 11:22 or whatever. Looks at the clock. Mulder calling her and everything like that. It was all set up, and then what is the big sort of finale of this? What's the final shot of this
we
season?
we get to see the cigarette smoking man lock the fetus away in the Ark of the Covenant room that's in the
Yep,
Pentagon.
just like how it
Which
was in the pilot when he put that sort of alien, whatever that little metal thing was up the nose, hides it in the Ark of the Covenant room in the Pentagon, and goes. All right, your thoughts on the Erlenmeyer flask?
okay, so well, let me get back to
Oh yeah,
your
yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's circle
your
back
guy
around.
here. So
Yeah.
okay, we didn't get a reason that the X Files got closed, and they've had build up in previous season or previous episodes as to why they would cancel the X Files, but nothing really happened out of the ordinary. No egregious violations of FBI policy or things of that nature. Like they didn't. Scully went to or was credentialed and went to a facility in order to retrieve that tissue, but that seemed like that was necessary, that they wanted that to happen, or the powers that be wanted that to happen. So I have a theory about why the Deep Throat was doing things the way that he was doing. Is he was told that he's been what do you call that, burn notice shit, like he was getting burned.
Oh, like he was going to die, sort of
Yeah,
thing. He was marked for assassination or whatever.
he was losing contacts. He was losing. He no longer had a job anymore. Whatever his position in the government was gone, and he was under such scrutiny that he needed Mulder to look at this. He was using Scully and Mulder to try to retrieve this as a bargaining chip in order to keep him alive, to give this fetal tissue to whatever entity. Obviously, I don't even think it was a government entity that was in that van
Yeah, they
taking
don't
that.
really explain who those men in black were.
Yeah, and that's another thing. That's a weird thing too, because she had to go to a military base to a fort to get this alien tissue. only to hand it back to the military at the Pentagon to be locked away in the Ark of the Covenant room. Like
Yeah.
it was weird, but I think that or Deep Throat was desperate to try to clear his name or to get on the good side of whoever is like, all right, we'll get you that tissue, whatever you want. And in the end, it cost him his life. I don't think that like his fight with Scully was to save her because she would have been gunned down instead. He just wanted to cover his own ass, and it didn't work out for him.
Why would those people in the van not have killed Mulder? Because there would have had to have been some sort of deal that Mulder survives, because they had him dead to rights. They could have shot Mulder in the head, dumped him in the river, and the
I
show would have been over. But they kick him out of that van.
don't they mention that earlier in the season though? Doesn't somebody ask the question why not just get rid of Mulder?
Yeah, there was that one episode. God, which one was it? It's at the very end when when they're about to fire Mulder.
Yeah,
And Mulder's like you can't cover up, lies or with the truth, or the truth will get out there. And he makes that big speech to that group of government agents, and then that dude goes like he goes to Deep Throat. He's like, why? That was our chance to fire him and get rid of him. And then Deep Throat was like, keep your enemies closer, sort of thing. That's like, we want Mulder there, but Deep Throat has had sort of different opinions on Mulder. Like, is he tells Mulder at one point he kind of just is using him as a tool, to deflect from other stuff. But then in other times he seems to be like, "Look, man, I really want to give you the proof that you're looking for." Even in this episode, when Mulder's like, "I'm gonna stop looking at this. I can't find anything here," and Deep Throat is hell bent on like, "Dude, you are so close." Like, I'm telling you, you are so close to finding the proof that you've wanted to find your entire life. Keep looking, keep digging. I just don't understand why these people in the van didn't kill Mulder.
I
Because once they had the alien in their possession, they could have just shot him and then kicked him out of the van and then drove off, and it would just been Scully finding both of them dead there.
I th- I would guess that he's just been a useful tool, and they still consider him to be that now. He came out of the back of the van. He still doesn't know anything. He has no concrete proof of anything.
Yeah,
He still has the same reputation that he has always had. But through Scully and their efforts, they were able to apparently retrieve this alien DNA that they must have wanted for some time. So you have this guy that doesn't know shit about shit and is willing to go on wild goose chases at a moment's notice to be teased along like that. So a useful idiot, maybe just keeping him around in that capacity.
maybe, but the people in the van to me didn't feel like your normal sort of government agency. They were going around whacking everybody. They were killing scientists, they were killing whoever without any sort of concern that they would get caught or that it was going to be a problem.
Well, they
It,
were the people that were doing the experiments were off the reservation doing their own personal experiments with alien DNA. Like
yeah,
they didn't have permission from anyone to do what they were doing, and they
yeah,
all needed to die as a result of it.
yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. How do you see the Deep Throat character after this? Do you feel like for the most of this time he was kind of quote unquote a good guy character trying to steer Mulder in the right direction? And like what was Deep Throat's ultimate goal? If he was like, look, my goal is to give Mulder the evidence he needs to prove his theories, right? What was Deep Throat then going to expect Mulder to do with that information? Was he going to take it to the news media and prove it to the world? Was
I
because
don't I
I don't
don't
know.
believe that Deep Throat ever had everything that he said every single episode, this one included, was always bullshit. I think he was always stringing him along and always expecting him to be that useful idiot. always expecting him to be that tool that he could use in order to further his stuff. And the argument at the very end and how passionate he was about getting that, and that it was his job to do that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't an impassioned plea with Scully like, you don't want to do this, let me do this. It's not an awareness that if Scully shows up, they're just going to gun him down or gun her down for doing the exchange. It came across as what was it? You remember when Bilbo Baggins sees the ring when he's in Rivendell and he's like, "Can't, let me
Yeah.
touch it again." That's what he was doing in that card. Give me my precious. It, it was just he seemed self-interested all the way to me, all the way until the end.
Okay.
And so I don't see him as a hero. I don't see him as anybody other than he was using him all the way to the end, and he tried to buy his freedom, and it still cost him his life.
Okay. So you think it was a shock to him when he got shot?
Oh yeah, yeah. He did not know it was coming.
Should have worn a bulletproof vest or something. Deep throat. Okay, yeah, and that's the thing. At the very end of this, we kind of Mulder tells Scully the X Files have been shut down. He doesn't give a reason, but he just kind of is like, "Well, Skinner told me," because I think Scully asked like, "Well, who said that?" And he's like, "Skinner." But yeah, we're left as an audience thinking, "Well, Deep Throat's dead. There's no more X Files. Where do we go from here?" So, your overall thoughts on the finale of season one, the Erlenmeyer Flask?
So I think it was excellent. I think a lot of these episodes involving UFOs and aliens and whatnot, they were the ones that tickled me the most. But when you have these 24 to 28 episode series, at least at that time, ones that left you on cliffhangers really didn't exist, or ones that like the way they ended, they kind of ended a little bit cutesy, but nothing that left you just absolutely fucking starved to watch the next season. And this was the first time I'd ever been exposed to something like this, and I want to say it was groundbreaking in just, oh my god, this stuff happened. At this point with their characters, like, now the X Files is canceled, and now I have to wait some indeterminate amount of time because we didn't know exactly when it
Yeah,
was going to air again. It's like, oh, it and
or if it
just
ever would air again.
right. And so you're just dying to know, what happens next. It was for season one to be able to pull this off as well as it did compared to other shows. Season one that kind of wasn't as good. I thought it was a great way to wrap up the entire season.
Yeah, I thought this was an excellent finale. I think it holds up perfectly even after all these years. It perfectly bookends, right? Pilot and this, both written by Chris Carter. Well, we've given Chris Carter a lot of shit this season for some of the episodes that he wrote. And even in this episode, where some of the motivations and the character actions don't really make sense based on what we've seen from the 23 previous episodes, Chris Carter had his thumb on the finger of the alien stuff and really sort of building like what the series is going to, because all of the stuff that we talk about here, the cloning, the alien human hybrids, the poisonous gas blood and all that stuff, that all continues going forward. Like it becomes major moments in the upcoming canon mythology of the X Files, and he kind of laid the groundwork for all of that. So as much shit as we give Chris Carter for some of the stories that he writes and whatnot, much respect to him as the creator of this show and kind of like the overall vision he had for it, because it really did. As a kid, it captured my imagination, and I thought this was a really awesome capper to the overall season. And of course, like next episode, next Friday, we're going to be talking about our season one recap, our full thoughts on what we feel of season one overall, and then giving our top 5 best and worst episodes of the season. So that'll be a lot of fun. Stay tuned next week. But yeah, leave a comment, everybody. We had a long discussion here about Deep Throat's motivations. I'd love to hear the listeners out there. What did you think Deep Throat's motivations were, and did you feel that he was, bullshitting his way through the whole thing? Did you think that at a certain point in time he realized, hey man, I actually like Mulder a lot. I'm going to actually try to help him here. Leave a comment. Let us know what you thought. Now, before we wrap up this episode, I did find a few interesting tidbits of information about it. A lot more than Born Again and Roland, I'll say that. This episode received an Edgar Award nomination in the Best Episode in a TV Series category and has, since broadcast, received positive responses from both critics and crew members. Chris Carter wrote the teleplay for this episode, which he described as, quote, the result of a year-long learning experience, unquote. He tried to firmly establish the mythology of the series, quote, where we explored the different avenues of government conspiracy and turning it into more than just flying saucers, unquote, and having what the writer called a, quote, defining moment, unquote, for Scully, where the agent would hear from a fellow scientist that she was dealing with truly extraterrestrial material. And I think that's an important moment for Scully. I think Gillian Anderson played it really well too. Just like the shock on her face when that
Sure.
other person's like, "This is from outer space. Like this ain't Earth-based bacteria here." She did a really really good job at that. And going forward, we kind of see, or at least my memory is that Scully kind of doesn't push back on the alien stuff so much anymore. She'll still push back on like ghosts and goblins and all of that kind of shit. But my recollection is this is a turning point for her where she starts believing Mulder's conspiracy stuff a lot more than this season. The writers killed off the recurring character Deep Throat to give audiences the impression that anyone outside of Mulder and Scully were expendable. The decision to shut down the X-Files was done to separate the agents, allowing the producers to work around Gillian Anderson's pregnancy, which contributed to an important plot development in the second season and affected the rest of the series. Now, that's actually interesting because, like today, and this gets back to your point, Jeremy, of how kind of shocking it was to kill a character like that on a mainstream TV show unexpectedly. Everyone nowadays, who loved Game of Thrones, right? They always talk about the Red Wedding episode. Like, oh my God, all these characters we thought were safe, all wiped out. In a 10-minute span in an episode, how shocking it was. Obviously, I don't think this is kind of like Red Wedding territory. I mean, there's a lot more characters that died in that, but it's kind of like an earlier precursor to
Yeah,
something like that.
a very tame, comparatively speaking, blueprint to where we ended up. But
Yeah, just that idea of a main character getting offed when you least expect it, sort of thing. The Fox network initially opposed the idea of Chris Carter having the X-Files closed down at the end of the episode, fearing that it would lead viewers to believe that the show had been canceled. And I actually think I was thinking about that. I was like, that's an interesting way to look at it because back then, think about the context in which this was 1994. Yeah, the internet was around, but the internet wasn't what it is today. It was nothing like that. You couldn't find websites just dedicated to, all right, we're on set, behind the scenes pics, and here's all the leaks coming out of the studios of what's going to happen and what's been renewed and what's not. We just didn't know. You
yeah,
had no clue. And I guess thinking back when I was a kid and watching it, I probably was kind of thinking to myself, well, is that the end of the show? The X Files is done. They closed it. Like, is it over? So I could imagine, we look back on executives now and be like, oh, haha, well, like, that's stupid. But I think back in the day, that would have been a legitimate concern from a studio executive. Like, what do you mean you're telling the audience the X Files is closed and it's done? So I could kind of see them getting a little worked up about that. The ending of the episode mirrors that of the pilot, including Mulder calling Scully at 11:21 p.m. and the smoking man storing evidence in the Pentagon. The tagline for this episode is "Trust no one," replacing the usual phrase "The truth is out there" and referencing Deep Throat's last words. Carter said of the episode, quote, "The Erlenmeyer Flask brings back nothing but good memories. It just has terrific images in it. It really brought the series in its first full year, in its first year full circle. It was successful in doing what we wanted to do, which was to close down the X-Files. It shocked a lot of people." Goodwin commented, quote, "Everything about that episode is absolutely first class. The acting, the art direction, the camera work. There's nothing in it that isn't the best you can get, and that's really a credit to a lot of very talented people." The episode introduced many concepts and themes that would appear in the mythology episodes for the show throughout the years, including genetic experiments, alien-human hybrids, toxic alien blood, government conspiracies, alien fetuses, and deadly assassins. When Jerry Hardin received his copy of the script, it included a note on the front from Chris Carter saying, quote, "No one really dies in the X-Files," unquote. And then the closing scenes I mentioned are almost exactly identical to the pilot, and this was the first time that an alien was ever shown on the show. So that's the Erlenmeyer Flask, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned next Friday because we are going to talk about our season 1 kind of thoughts and recap what we thought of the show first season overall, and then we're going to talk about our top 5 worst and top 5 best episodes of the season. So again, hit that like and subscribe, leave a comment, tell us what you thought of season 1 of the X-Files, and then stay tuned next Friday as we discuss first season. See you then.